Hi friends, welcome back to my channel Total QA. In today's video, we're discussing about how do we use CSS Selector in Selenium WebDriver. Before that, we will look into the playlist, the video playlists which are already available right now for us to access. We have already created Java playlist and Selenium WebDriver playlist and CSS tutorial where we have completed one topic only. We are going to cover another topic today. And Xpath tutorial, we have covered all the 4 different videos which will be helpful for us to understand and become an expert in Xpath. Okay, so today we'll go ahead and start adding one more video in the playlist to the CSS tutorial. Okay, so let's get into the topic now. The part 1 completed, which is about CSS introduction. Today we are going to cover part 2, which is usage of CSS Selector in Selenium. What does CSS stands for? CSS stands for cascading style sheets. Mainly there are 2 different types of CSS available: absolute CSS, relative CSS. Before we go ahead and understand what is absolute CSS and relative CSS, let's go back and understand how do we write Xpath in Selenium. There is a relationship between Xpath and CSS. If we know how do we write Xpath, CSS is very easy. Okay, so let's go back to understand the Xpath now. If you look into this HTML tree, this is already covered in our Xpath tutorials. If you look into this HTML tree, what we do mainly, we start from HTML, we navigate to body, then table body, then table row, then table data, then username. If we would like to select the username or identify the username, we'll follow this path, right? HTML, body, table, table body, table row, table data, username. Right? So if you look at, this is a section, this entire section we focus. This is called absolute Xpath. Right? So how do we write absolute Xpath? If you look at right hand side, the absolute Xpath we have written like this. See, we start from HTML, body, table, table body, it is in the table row of 1, then table data of 2, then input. Then how do we write CSS using Xpath? Very simple. You need to just change, instead of the slash, you need to put one angular bracket. The right hand side angular bracket, if you put, this will become CSS. Very simple. Okay, let's try that. Okay, suppose for example, I'll copy this. I'll keep it in a notepad. See here, I have changed. Here if you look at, I copy pasted this Xpath here and I converted here. If you look at this into CSS, what is the difference between these two? If you look at, the angular bracket greater than is added here. That's the only difference. This will become CSS. Okay, so whenever we get an Xpath, what we can do, we can simply convert into the greater than symbol instead of slash. That's the first rule we have to follow. Then, when you look at the index here, table row of 1, table data of 2, we are going to provide here, in the case of Xpath, we are using square brackets and we are putting the index number. The index in the case of Xpath starts from 1. Okay, and also instead of putting square brackets, in the case of CSS, there is a small difference. Whenever we wanted to select the table row of 1, we just need to put one important thing, that is the function we have to give. The function is nth of type is a function. We are passing index as a argument to the function, right? So two important points we have to remember. First one is whenever we find the slash, we have to update it to the angular bracket. Second one is whenever we see an index, we will convert into the function which is nth of type. We pass the argument as 1. It's a function. Nth hyphen of hyphen type. It's a function. It's a we should just mention the parenthesis and try to put 1 for the argument. Same thing, it is applicable here also, right? Got the idea now? So this is converted finally into this. Okay, so let's try to practice this in a real-time website. Let me open a website which is already hosted on TotalQA. It's a login page and it has a table. This is a table, right? How do we know? This is already explained. The table structure, the HTML tree structure is already explained. It is a table. Table has a T body, then table row, then table data has a username, table data has a password, table data has a login button, and also in addition to that, there is a username text box. There is a password text box and there is one reset button. So this is a HTML tree. Okay, so we will follow the same thing, apply the same rules for the website as well. That website is also having the HTML table. Okay, let's get into that. Okay, one more important point. Whenever we try to add any content into the website, it is not that directly you get same content, right? There will be some, if you look at here, there are some images in the top. There are some other information available in the top also. After that only the table is getting displayed. So what is happening between HTML and table, there is a lot of information getting displayed in this website. You cannot directly access HTML body table. You can check. Suppose if I give /HTML/body/table. Why I cannot access this here? The reason being, if you look at the left hand side, this section, let me show you that. If you look at this section, let me highlight to the top. If you look at here, so here under body you have a div, you have another div, you have another div, you have another div, then you have an article. If you scroll down like that, it will continue, and after that you will find a table inside the body after multiple div sections. Now I have a challenge now here. How do I select a table within the body after multiple div tags? How do I select? It's very simple. In the case of Xpath, we use subchild concept. What is subchild concept here? If you look at, for this body, let me scroll up. Okay, if you look at here, let me try to put that in the right hand side way, so that we can view everything now here. If you look at here, let's look at where the table is getting displayed, right? Okay, yeah, if you see here, yeah, let me highlight again. So here you are in the body section, div section, then you have another div, then another div is available, and in another div there are so many sections available. Then in the article you will find a table somewhere here. Then in that case, how do we select the table within the body? We will use a concept called subchild. When it's a subchild, you can give body 2 slashes, 2 forward slashes, and you can give either body directly jump to table, or directly jump to div section, or directly jump to this div section. Any div section you can jump by giving the subchild. Between these two tag names we have to give 2 forward slashes. Between 2 forward slashes means, what does it mean? If you look at here, I will select here HTML body. I can find body, but in the body there are multiple div tags, but I don't want to select the div tags. I wanted to select directly the table. I give 2 forward slashes. Just selecting. Is it working? So this is the example we are using it for our practice. Now we don't select anything between body and table. We just directly select body, 2 forward slashes and table. This is called as subchild concept in the case of Xpath. Okay, now and table has, let's try to change the dock side to down. Let's start now. Now we got some idea how to write Xpath in this website. So we go to the table now. Let me try to show you the table. The table, we are here, right? In the table, you can expand here also. You can see table body has 3 table rows, right? You can check, right? Now table has tr of 1, has td of 2 slash input. This is an absolute export. Okay, 1 second. Table has, check, table has, what is the content of table? Table has table body, right? Table body slash table row of 1. Then we expand. Then we have table data. Then slash input. So now we are able to select the input element. How do I convert this into CSS? Very simple. First thing, I will try to copy this one. I'll keep in a notepad. Okay, we'll just go to we'll take another notepad for understanding. Let me keep it here. Okay, let me reduce the font. Okay. So how do I convert this? First thing what I do, I remove all the slashes. So I just put HTML body table, body, table row of 1, table data of 2, input. Right. So in the case of CSS, we just need to put greater than symbol, right? The angular bracket, body. But here you cannot keep greater than symbol. Why? Because if it is 1 forward slash, you can put greater than symbol. But if it is not 1 forward slash, if it's 2 forward slashes, that is in between the tag names. Means if you look at here, it is in between the tag names. You are putting 2 forward slashes in between the tag names. In that case, this is called as subchild concept. So if you wanted to apply the subchild concept in the case of CSS, we just need to leave the space. Don't add anything, just leave the space. Then table has t body, then table row of 1, then table data of 2, then input here. Now this again we will convert into CSS. Now how? Just try to copy the same thing, put it here. What is the difference I do? I just select here tr of nth of type 1 and td of then I will copy this. I will just go back to our real-time website. I'll just paste it here and just enter. Are you getting the input element? So it's very easy for us to write down CSS if we know how to write Xpath. This is called as absolute CSS. Okay, let's try to go back to relative Xpath first. So we also know relative Xpath, right? We'll try to write down the relative Xpath. When you try to write relative Xpath, what we can do? We can write different combinations, right? See, suppose I wanted to start with HTML, right? Suppose I wanted to start from table. Suppose let's try to convert these two different XPaths into CSS. Very simple. First try to convert this one. If you want to convert this one, I'll just write it down here as I remove the 2 forward slashes. If I find 2 forward slashes between 2 different tag names, I remove this, add the space, and I find 1 forward slash, change it, length of type 1. We'll try to reduce the font. Right. Similarly, length of type 2. Then the same way I can change here also. Table T-body tr of length type of 1, td length of type of 2. Then input. Right. So let's take some more examples. Okay. Especially when it comes to attributes. How do we write Xpath when it comes to attributes? Let's discuss that. So when it comes to attributes, suppose for example there is an attribute. Let's go back to our website and see what are the attributes which are available for the table. If you look at this table, has multiple attributes. One is name, second one is border, then you have align center, then border color is equal to black. Right. Suppose I wanted to apply an attribute in the case of Xpath. So how do we write? Let's write it down here and try to take it to the notepad to update it to CSS. So I just say table @name equal to cart, then table body, then table row of 1, then table data of 2, then input. Right. So whenever we are trying to associate an attribute, in the case of Xpath, we put symbol, the attribute name, the attribute value. Let's try to convert this into CSS. Very simple, right? So let's try to do that. Again, this is the example for Xpath. How do we convert this into CSS? Right? So also I'll just put for your information here, this is CSS. Okay, so it will be easy for us to relate. Okay, now how do I convert this into CSS? Very important principle. What I said, whenever you find 2 forward slashes in the beginning, don't add anything. Just put table @name is equal to cart. Don't add anything. In the case of CSS, for the relative CSS especially, don't add anything in the beginning. It starts with the tag name. Okay, table only. In the case of 2 forward slashes, in the case of Xpath, we will just keep it blank in the case of CSS. And greater than T-body, then tr, I directly write length of type of 1. Similarly, I try to put td length of type 2. Similarly, put greater than symbol, input symbol. So what is the important point we need to remember in the case of CSS is we need to remove the special character symbol in the case of the element when we are adding an attribute. So if you just copy this now, okay, and just go back to our example and try to practice, it will work successfully. Okay, very simple. Then let's see some more examples. Okay, let's take this example. Okay, for that, first let's look into the table row. There are totally how many rows are there? Let me highlight. There are totally 3 rows are there. Suppose if I am interested to start with table row of 1, I can use index tr square brackets of 1 or tr nth of type of 1 in the case of CSS. But instead of that, I will use tr id is equal to item 1. So how do we apply id in the case of Xpath? Then we will try to convert this into CSS. Let's start. So how do we write id generally? So generally what we do id in the case of id? So item 1 /, right? Then tt of 2. Okay, it is selecting as 1 second. Okay, so let's try to do one thing here. Table, first let's write on the Xpath table @id is equal to item 1. Not table, okay, this is tr, right? Okay, that's the reason it is not selecting tr @id is equal to item 1. Okay, then you have table data of 2. Okay, then you have input. Suppose for example, if you wanted to convert this into CSS, what we can do? We can simply remove symbol. But it is not only that. In the case of CSS, in the case of ID, you can even write tr hash item 1. Then here you can put greater than symbol. Here you put nth of type 2, then greater than input. So let me copy this and tell you what I have done right now. In the case of Xpath, we generate @id is equal to item 1, then table body, then tr of 1, then dd of 2, something like this, right? So suppose how do I convert this into CSS? So in the case of CSS, you can even write, okay, we are trying to start from tr of 1. Okay, let's start from tr of 1. tr @id is equal to item 1, right? And you have an input. So how do we convert here? If you look at, we are just putting tr hash item 1. Why? Why? Because in the case of ID, we have to use tagName hash ID value. Syntax is tagName hash ID value. So that is what we are giving. tr is a tagName hash ID value. In the case of ID. And there is one more way of writing this in CSS. You can even write hash ID value greater than tt of nth of type 2. You can even write this as well. Okay, you can check. This also will work. It's working. Okay, so this is also one of the important example which we can remember. Let's move on. Okay, so let's focus on the direct input element. Whatever the knowledge we learned right now, we'll try to apply on the input element directly. Okay, so let's focus on the input element. In the table row, in the table data of 2, we have input element. So let's focus on the input element now directly. So input ID equal to username, input name is equal to username, input type is equal to text, input class is equal to text box color padding, right? So what we can do here now, let's try to focus on that. So input, generally in the case of Xpath, what to do //input, but in the case of CSS, just put input @name equal to @ is required. No, not required. In the case of CSS, name is equal to, say, simple put cart. Why it is not working? It is not name is equal to its username. Name is equal to username. Is working? This is one of the CSS. You can even try for type. You can even try for class. Let me try for type. Is equal to text. But there are 4 input elements which are having type is equal to text here. Okay, it might be possible, it might be not in the table, it might be outside the table as well. This might matches within the web page. Similarly, suppose for example, if you wanted to apply the class, let me apply the class. Class is equal to, let me copy this. It's always important, we have to copy the attribute value from the source. Okay, and see, it is working fine. So you can apply all the attributes within the square brackets, but without using @ symbol. And also in the case of ID that I already explained you, what we can do, tr input #ID value, or else you can simply put #ID value. Right? So you can try all these examples on this website. It's easy for you to practice also. Right? See here. #ID value or #tagName. What is the tagName input? #username. Okay, is it clear? And one more point I'll just add, because I explained in the beginning also, subchild, what we put. Suppose for example you have table body, table row. What we do in the case of subchild concept, we put here. What we put subchild concept in the case of Xpath, we just remove this, put here like this. Child. Similarly, subchild in the case of CSS table as a T body, as a TR, what we do? We just remove this, put a space. It's a subchild concept in the case of CSS. It's very important. Okay, just remember, this is what we are using in our examples also. So let's go back to our main sheet now. Anything else pending to discuss now? If you look at all the different types of CSS we discussed, and one more important thing is attribute selector. As I said, table attribute value is equal to attribute name is equal to attribute value. ID selector, tag name #ID value or #ID value, it's a syntax. And very important thing is class selector, which we have to discuss now. So if you want to understand class selector, I request everyone, please go through the video 1 that is already available. CSS introduction part 1, it is already available. If you wanted to understand the class selector in the case of CSS, definitely you have to go through this video to understand what is class attribute. Okay, now if you look at these 2 different examples here, let me highlight the different examples here. So what is the difference between these 2 lines of statement here? First statement is having one class value, class is equal to text box. Another class is having multiple classes separated by spaces. If you look at here, A is A, B separated by space, B, C separated by space, C, D separated by space. How many class values are there? Totally 4 class values separated by spaces. Then we call it as a compound classes. So how do we handle the classes in the case of CSS? If you have one class value, you can put dot textboxcolor. If you have multiple class values, you can put dot A, dot B, dot C, dot D. Then your statement will be driver.findElement by.cssSelector .A, .B, .C, .D. And one more important point to note, whenever it is compound classes, we cannot use the locator class name. I hope all of you remember the class name, driver.findElement by.className. So you cannot use driver.findElement by.className. You cannot use a.b.c.d. No, you can use only one class, driver.findElement by.className textboxcolor. That's it. You cannot use a, b, c, d because compound classes are not supported by the class name. Whenever there are compound classes, means multiple values separated by space. I'll show this example in our website. Okay, you have to use CSS selector only. Dot A, dot B, dot C, dot D. Okay, let's look into our website whether we have compound classes available or not. Okay, so let's go back. Compound classes. See here. If you look at this class is having compound classes, means two values separated by space. What are these two values? You can go to the style section. It is clearly mentioned. One is textboxcolor yellow. Okay. One is that is somewhere in the bottom. One is padding. You see here padding also there. Padding also somewhere it is available. Okay. You can just find out. See here padding also available. So these two class values I have applied for the class. So how do we use in the case of CSS? Very simple. Just go back to selectors hub. Just type here dot. See here it's already giving the information for us. Textboxcolor dot padding. Suppose if there is only one class, let me check here. Do we have anything which is having one class? Yes, dot textboxcolor 1. You can look out here. Right? So in that case, what I do, I can put only one. So if you have two values, you put dot value 1, dot value 2. If you have one value, just put dot value 1. This is called as class selector in the case of CSS. Right? So whatever the examples we discussed in this video, again I'll copy paste for your information in the end of this end of this notes. This notes will be available for you to practice in our website. You can refer to our website. All this information will be available about CSS Selector. How do we know? You actually, once after this video, you can go back to the website here. You can search for CSS in our website. Let me show you. Just search for CSS here. You can have so many tips of CSS, and similarly difference between nth of type of CSS, CSS quiz for beginners, HTML examples. Okay, then you will find, okay, if you just open this is for WebElement methods. Let me go back and show you. Okay, I'll just find out for this information. It is there. Web travel example, performance testing. Okay, yeah, if you look at Selenium locators, you'll find this notes is already available. If you go to the bottom, majorly all are covered. What all we covered, it's already available in our website also. To scroll down, you will find this here to see. Right? So I clearly explained what is this subchild concept, especially, right? Whenever you have subchild, you have to put like this. Right? See, I have given all the examples for you to practice. Only thing is, you just need to refer to this blog link and also refer to the video 1 to understand CSS thoroughly and become an expert in CSS. Okay? So I will provide this link in the description. You can go to this link and also you can go through the video thoroughly and let me know if you have any comments and update in the comment section. If you like my video, please subscribe and share with your friends.